it hit me hard, but it's amazing what a good night's sleep does.
Probably our first good night's sleep in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, no.
Great. Well, we'll just a couple more minutes here. We'll get going, and then Joanne, once we hit the kind of top of the hour here, I'll just give you a go sign, and we'll get started.
Great.
Hey, Teresa Rugg. Nice to see you, Teresa. Mute lines here.
All right, we are there. Unmute your speaker, increase volume to hear it.
We can hear you, Teresa. How you doing? All right, let's go ahead and mute there. All right. That's great, Peter. We can see you as well, which is awesome. Just going to give it another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll get rolling.
Great. Thanks.
There, and then just turn off the sound. You should be good. It had sound for a minute there.
At least I assume they have it.
Self-care a lot and kind of being able to take breaths even before I go in for the visit. So I'm learning a lot about ways
how to manage.
care.
Yeah, it's hard.
We can turn off the noise in the background there. There you go. All right. Well, Joanne, I'm going to go ahead and turn things on over to you. I'll let you get started.
Great, thanks. So, and we're on record, Ken? Yeah?
Yes, we are recording.
Yeah. So welcome everyone to the October 2019 Results Global Poverty webinar. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Joanne Carter. I'm Executive Director of Results Ed Fund. And I'm so glad to be on with you
Sure,
today.
what just happened? So download and run Zoom.
Ken, do you want to just make sure that we're muted?
Yeah, I'm going to hit these mute buttons here.
I don't know what happened.
Thanks. So I'm thrilled to be on with all of you today, just a few days after the really remarkable and successful replenishment meeting of the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria on Thursday in Lyon, France. And first to say, I was just so honored to be there representing all of you. And we have a lot to celebrate. You know, the biggest celebration is that millions of people's lives will be saved, and also millions more people won't get sick from these diseases, and their families won't be pushed into poverty. Like all of the work that you did for this last year, and I know for many of you, the years that you've gone through building relationships to encourage and inspire and push and track down members of Congress to stand firm on the funding for the full US 1/3 share of that 14 billion target was absolutely essential to the success of the replenishment. You know, all that work, the 175 face-to-face meetings with members of Congress, over 400 meetings with staff, the 220 pieces of media and probably more, the 250 plus Republican and Democratic signers on letters, the 2 congressional resolutions marked up by the key committees. And just to say that together with allies in the US and partners around the world, we succeeded. I have more I want to share with you, but first we have a really special guest and I want to introduce him. So Peter Sands, the Executive Director of the Global Fund, is with us today. This was Peter's first replenishment. I hope it's not going to be his last. It's a lot of work. But I can tell you, as somebody who saw the impact of his work in the US and heard about his efforts in capitals around the world, that Peter really did a magnificent job and we would not be where we are. We would not have succeeded without him. His clarity on these issues, his eloquence, really his ability to make the case to policymakers across the political spectrum in really different environments, and his absolutely tireless efforts. And I think Peter's been working pretty much flat out since January. And I'm really touched because Peter not only probably didn't get any sleep for the last week, but he was actually sick yesterday and wasn't even sure he could join us, but was feeling better today. And so was generous enough to be with us. So first, Peter, a big welcome and a big thank you for the incredibly important role you played in all of this. So it's great to have you.
Joanne, thank you very much, and particularly for that rather too flattering introduction. And I'm not exactly on death's door. My assistant was very protective of me. She thought it was a mad idea that I should be spending a Saturday evening talking to you guys when I was pretty knackered and also sort of was fighting off a cold. But anyway, it's amazing what a good night's sleep does. I actually want to start just by simply thanking all of you. The absolute foundation of any global fund for replenishment is the US contribution. And this year, more than most, there was huge uncertainty in the rest of the world as to whether the US would step up. And I would have the first question in almost every meeting with donors elsewhere in the world would be, what's going to happen with the US? Are they really going to do it? And so it was fantastic to be able to come to this replenishment with bills out of both the House and the Senate, both at a 15.6% increase to 1.56 and a commitment on the 1/3. This was very, very powerful. And without that, we would not have got other donors to step up in the way that they did. And I know that all of you put an enormous amount of work into doing this. I mean, the numbers Joanne was just talking back to about meetings, all the stuff to do with the letter to Pompeo, all the appropriations letters, all the stuff about, I think it's Revolution 517 or whatever, around the 1/3. I know an immense amount of effort has gone into that, and I am, as I say, enormously appreciative. We don't take it for granted at all. It was a remarkable occasion on Thursday. I was proud to be part of it, but also so exhausted that although Joanne has been very kind to talk about me being a persuasive and articulate advocate, by the time we actually announced the results, even President Macron, who was extraordinarily eloquent, managed to get confused between euros and dollars. And I was barely able to string a sentence together because we had been up most of the night basically putting the squeeze on various donors around the world. And then literally the numbers were changing as we walked into the room and onto the stage. So we were managing a very dynamic situation, but we got there. We have together raised more money than the Global Fund has ever managed to raise before. Not only that, but it's the biggest single fundraising for global health ever. And the reverberations of this will actually extend beyond global health, because I think it's an incredibly powerful signal that in a world which is, riven with tensions, fake news, cynicism, nationalism, populism, actually we can come together to solve common problems. We can come together to act to address the plight of the poorest, the most vulnerable, those who are suffering most. And we can actually unite around the objective of making a better world. And that signal of having a target for replenishment that was actually met, which is almost unique, that has massively broadened. We have, I think, 23 new public donors. We have 17 new private sector players. We have a bunch of returning donors. And these are not insignificant. To give you a flavor, Spain, which dropped out of being a donor to the Global Fund after the financial crisis and the problems that Spain had, came back with a €100 million pledge. The UAE, which has never pledged to the Global Fund, pledged within about 20 minutes of the final announcement, $55 million, €50 million, which is equivalent to $55 million. And we had a range of others. So I think both in terms of meeting the target, the sheer scale of the resources, and the broadening of the donor base, this was both a great day for the fight against AIDS, TB, and malaria, because it means that we can really turn the hashtag Step Up the Fight into a reality of stepping up the fight. But it was also a great day for global health and a great day for the broader sustainable development agenda. I think we have three things to thank for that. First is, frankly, the extraordinary mobilization of community activists such as yourselves all over the world, not just in the donor countries, but also in the implementer countries, where there was an enormous amount of activity putting pressure on heads of state, say in Africa, to both increase their own commitment, but also for them to put pressure on donors in the West. The second was, frankly, Macron and France. The French really put their diplomatic network to work to put pressure on donors, but also, and I'm sure Joanne would say the same, in the moment, on the day, Macron was extraordinary. He basically started the day by saying he would lock everybody in the room until we got to 14 billion. And his evident passion and commitment, and his willingness I was meeting him on the Wednesday night. I saw him after midnight, and he was texting and asking us to set up calls for sort of before 7 o'clock in the morning for various leaders in the world. Having somebody like that really focused makes a huge difference. And then finally, I think the other essential thing, the absolute bedrock thing, is the results that the Global Fund delivers. The reality is we have a very strong case based on both the sheer scale of the need and on the demonstrable impact that we can deliver. And the challenge I've already thrown out to the Secretariat is to say, okay, this bit of the game is over. Now we go into the next bit, which is we have to make every one of these extra dollars have a disproportionate incremental impact in terms of saving lives and accelerating progress towards ending the epidemics. We owe it to the donors and ultimately to the taxpayers underpinning all the public donors, but we owe it even more to those who are affected by and vulnerable to the diseases. And so now we are acutely focused on saying, how do we make this a real stepping up the fight, a step change in mortality rates, a step change in infection rates. So I'll stop here, but that's what I wanted to say to you all, was a big, big thank you. And let's actually use this momentum as actually Macron talked about this a sort of change in dynamic. There's been so much cynicism, so much sort of things sliding the wrong way. But this is a moment where that didn't happen. And we should seize that and use that as we think about other causes that are important, such as the continued funding of polio eradication, such as the replenishment of Gavi that comes next year. I'll stop here, Joanne.
Peter, thanks so much. That was great. And again, I don't think I was exaggerating your role. And, for people to understand what you were just describing with Macron, but there was a period where you all kind of disappeared and people were making pledges, but you were all literally working behind the scenes because even as of the morning, we didn't have the full funding. And so you all made that happen even in literally the last hours of that. And it was supposed to end, I think, at 1 p.m. and it went till about 2:30, and we were all like anxiously awaiting. And when you were able to come out and say that you'd gotten the full amount. Just one last thing maybe to share with the U.S. folks, because I don't know if they fully understand it, like why it was so important. You explained why it was really important that the U.S. came forward, but I think it'd be interesting for people to understand why it was really important that the Congress felt like they could say the number 4.68 billion, the 3-year number, and what that allows you to do in terms of allocation.
Yeah, as I said, having the number is incredibly important because other donors see it, and also the way that the US looks at the 1/3 matching as a way of leveraging the US contribution, other donors look at it as a way of leveraging their own contributions. Because the way we position it to them is we say, if you pay us $1, we can unlock 50 cents from the US. So it actually works very well from both perspectives. But the point about the 3-year thing is really important. The way the Global Fund works is that immediately following the replenishment, and we literally start this next week, we work on the allocation of all the funds for the whole 3-year period across all the countries. And basically the way it works is there's an algorithm which the board has approved, which concentrates the money mainly on the places with the highest disease burden and the lowest national income per capita. So basically the poorer you are and the more disease you have, the more money you get. It's first done mechanically, and then there's a set of sort of qualitative filters that ensures things like continuity of service. If you've got a country where the mathematical calculation says the allocation should go down, but if we're supporting people on antiretroviral treatment, for example, we're not going to reduce that. So we go through a set of qualitative filters, and then we get it approved by the audit committee by like the 24th or 25th of this month, gets approved by the board in early November, and then we inform the countries, and that kicks off the whole grant-making cycle. And to give you a sense of the way the timing works, it's actually pretty acute. The programs that are being funded by the current replenishment money, i.e. dating back to 2016, that essentially runs out at the end of 2020. So we have to agree the grants for all the programming for the next cycle, 21 to 22, 23, before the end of 2020, which means in some cases, multiple grants per country across over 100 countries. So several hundred grant programs have to get agreed. And the critical thing is to make these grant programs effective, they are funded on a 3-year period. It doesn't make sense to invest in health programs on just a year-by-year basis. It's very hard to have the kind of impact you want. And that means we need to be confident that as we start this process, that we are going to have 3 years of funding. And so both the language in the Senate bill, the explicit language in the Senate bill, and actually the language that Pete Aguilar used quite carefully on the stage at the replenishment conference were incredibly useful to us, because we can then use that as a basis of having sufficient confidence that we can allocate money to countries and to grant programs for 3 years, even though we know that it's going to get appropriated on an annual basis by Congress. So the subtleties of those sort of forward-looking things, which appropriators always hate to do, were actually very significant for us, given the nature of how we actually do programming and translate the money into saving lives and having impact.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Peter. That was really clear and I think really helpful for people to understand. And we are absolutely committed that we will ensure that those appropriations are delivered for the next 3 years, like whatever the political environment. So anyway, I just really thank you for joining us, Peter. It's really great to have you just a few days after, and really exciting. Again, thank you for your leadership. And
Or Joanne, you just froze up there. I don't know if you can hear us on the.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, I may just I'm going to take off my video in case that helps.
Great.
Yeah, I took off my video in case that helps with bandwidth. So just Peter, thanks a lot. I said, yeah, we're committed to getting that appropriations delivered for the next 3 years, and also just to say thank you again for joining us. I hope you feel better and get lots of rest. So thanks a lot. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joanna. Thanks again to all of you. Of course, I have the fun prospect of all our board committees next week, which it's not exactly what I would regard as recuperation, but there we are. Anyway, thanks a lot. I'll leave you guys now. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks so much, Peter. Thank you. Ken, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, you sound great, Joanne.
Yeah, sorry, I lost the video. So Peter laid out a lot of what partly I wanted to describe, which was that the meeting was, I think it was the most exciting, inspiring pledging meeting I've ever been at. And it was, again, to be clear that not only, I mean, the US funding was so essential for the replenishment, but the kind of last minute work that President Macron did and Peter Sands and Gates to get us to the 14 billion could never have happened if we didn't have clearly pledged that US 1/3 fair share, because we would have been so far away that there would have been no negotiation to get to the target. And so in so many ways, what you did not only sort of, I mean, sealed the success long-term, but even in those last moments, they were able to build on what we already had to literally get us over the top and work with countries to, you know, up their pledges even in the last couple of hours. And so, you know, and I want to say again, you know, we knew going into this that the administration had proposed a 29% cut to the global fund, and also moving it, as you know, from a 1/3 fair share from the US to a 1/4. You know, and we needed actually to increase, to stay at 1/3 and to increase the funding by over $200 million a year. And also, again, that it wasn't just a budget question, but with the administration, a real opposition in some ways to multilateral funding, and just a very chaotic environment in the administration. And so it was clear that we needed a strategy where Congress would lead on this. And Congress would lead on this not just to appropriate the money, but in many ways to communicate directly to the rest of the world. So I just cannot, you know, again, I spent several days with our French partners, you know, our French partners and others. And I also can't say strongly enough how the signals that we provided through the letter to Secretary of State Pompeo all the way almost a year back, that I was able to go to India where they first kicked off the replenishment, and the US didn't even show up, and I handed out copies of that letter to every donor. But the appropriations language and the resolutions passed by the House and Senate were all things that were directly communicated to the French government, you know, by the Global Fund, but also by our partners in France that were meeting monthly with Macron's advisors and getting information from us about what was happening. So, you know, all of this was part of what made the other donor pledges possible. And I have to say, I was incredibly inspired and proud when these 4 members of Congress, 2 Democrat and 2 Republican, came to the replenishment. And the first day, the Wednesday before the replenishment, the 4 of them stood on stage, and Congressman Aguilar, it was, I think you saw it in the chat box, but it was Pete Aguilar from California, Will Hurd from Texas, Martha Roby from Alabama, and Brenda Lawrence from Michigan. And Congressman Aguilar spoke and said not only that the U.S. Congress was committed to the $1.56 billion for 2020, but the 3-year commitment, and really just spoke eloquently about the bipartisan U.S. support for this. And it was really, and you could feel it was palpable in the room, the excitement about that and the share that the U.S. was providing. So just to say again, it was a remarkable experience. The work that you did directly translated into that 14 billion and so much of what made that possible. And I want to just end with a bit of a story, a personal story that was shared by one of the activists who is, she's a spokesperson for RED, the RED campaign that works with One and raises private sector resources for the Global Fund. And her name is Connie Mudenda, and she's from Zambia. And she spoke on the stage several times, but the day of the replenishment, she spoke about how for too long living or dying of HIV was a matter of being lucky or unlucky. And she talked about her own life, and she said, I was infected with HIV as unlucky. I had no access to treatment because of where I lived and the time I lived, unlucky. Her 3 children were born HIV positive, very unlucky. And then she talked about how she lost all 3 of those children to HIV. And as she said, unlucky barely touches that. She said, my luck started to turn around when the world acknowledged the global humanitarian crisis. And then we had access to antiretroviral treatment, and I was lucky. That treatment was first at a price, and then later when the Global Fund came, that treatment was free. I was lucky. And then she talked about having lost her 3 other children. She now has a daughter who's 7 years old, and that daughter was up on stage with her, who is HIV free. And she said, but this is not about luck. You know, it's decades of hard work and activism and investment of resources. And she ended by saying, my life today is because people in this room, and by that I mean this larger room of all of us, I'm saying that, my life today is because people in this room took luck out of the equation and replaced it with justice. So really huge thanks to all of you for replacing the, luck or lack of luck of where people are born and what they have access to with justice. So thanks for everything you do. I hope you really heard from Peter the part that you played in this, and I'll turn it over to Ken Patterson. Thanks, Ken.
Hey, Joanne, thanks so much. Really appreciate that. Really moving to hear from both you and Peter on this. And just, this wasn't an accident. This particular strategy of getting Congress to step up, as Joanne talked about right at the very beginning, we just knew that this administration was, we didn't know who to even contact, and we didn't know if they would be, receptive to influence. So putting Congress up front from the get-go was our strategy, and thankfully, that really worked in working on that with us and our partners. So I wanted just to recap just a couple of your accomplishments throughout this, just the incredible work that you've done. But before I do that, I think Peter Sand's message around hope, around good news, around something happening in the world that is kind of out of sync with what's been happening, something positive, the world coming together in a very positive way, and the United States participating in a positive way is a great message for all of us to be sharing with everybody in our networks who had anything to do with and anybody we talked to about it. We have a unique message to be able to share with the world through the media and all that. I just want you to, we'll talk about that in a minute, but again, I just think that that's really powerful because there is a lot of cynicism in the world. There's a lot of challenging things going on right now, but this is one of those times where actually everybody came together to make the right things happen. And again, not chance, but justice. So again, I just counted up face-to-face meetings, 175 face-to-face meetings. Just this year, 175 face-to-face meetings with reps and senators, plus over 400 meetings with staff where we know that the Global Fund was talked about. And I know that there are meetings out there that have not been reported. Again, as Joanne mentioned, you helped pass 2 bipartisan resolutions on the Global Fund, one in the House and one in the Senate. They both got passed out of the appropriations, the key committees that they were considering them, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Your work on the House resolution in particular was amazing. House Resolution 517. In a very short amount of time. Again, this thing was introduced on July 24th. Congress was in for a week and then promptly went on recess for 5 weeks and then came back and, impeachment started in September and all of the oxygen was sucked out of Washington, but you stayed with it and it was challenging work you put up. Right now there are 132 co-sponsors, 25 of them Republicans on that thing. And again, just some really fantastic and amazing work that you've done there. At least 223 pieces of Global Fund media across 36 states. You got the majority of the 137 signers on the letter to Secretary of State Pompeo earlier this year. And then, really generating majority of the support for the Global Fund appropriations letters earlier this year, which has been instrumental in fending off the administration's 29% cut and really turn that into a 16% increase in both the House and the Senate for both fiscal year 2020 and the language talking about the 3-year commitment that the United States will be making. I told it up, and you were instrumental in generating the majority of 462 signatures on letters and resolutions, with over 250 members of Congress actually doing that. And that really was critical in helping secure the $4.8 billion for this 3-year pledge. So I just want to point out, I also want to point out that these data points represent the things that you actually helped accomplish. It does not represent all of the efforts that you made that may not have resulted in a letter being published or a meeting with a member of Congress or a signature on a resolution. Behind these numbers are a mountain of other efforts that don't show up in these specific numbers. But I want to note that every action that you took and that you had people take, every effort that you made was required to get this body of work done. And we know that all of our actions don't turn into gold, and we know that we don't always know which ones will, but every letter you wrote and submitted, every effort you made to get a meeting, every attempt you put to somebody into action, every meeting that you had helped us get there, and every bit of it counts. So I want to thank you for your partnership in this, and again, just for the amazing efforts. So what I'd like to do, aside from the numbers now, is kind of move to hearing from some folks about the specific efforts you made to have the successes or just the work that you did on the Global Fund. I've got 3 people I want to have share, but then I do want to open it up for other things that folks have to say. So I want to first invite Sister Donna Galetovich from the Cleveland, Ohio group to share with us. Sister Donna, are you there? I can unmute you here.
Can you hear me, Ken?
Yeah, I can. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I'm so happy and pleased at the results of the planning meeting, and very triply happy that I had a tiny, tiny part in it, because I did have a medical emergency unexpectedly at the end of May that put me in the hospital and under surgery. And during my recovery, and when I could begin thinking again, I thought about results and what a strong voice we all had, even though that we were all kinds of ages, cultures, from countries. We are all passionate about eliminating poverty and the suffering and the injustice that happens. So I realized I want to participate still, even though my personal life was being disrupted. And I realized that what I needed, I actually had. Okay, I had some knowledge about the issues. I kept up to date with the wonderful information that we get from results. And I also had the weekly wrap, which Representative Joyce puts out telling what he has done during the last 7 to 10 days. And I also downloaded a copy of the original resolution, which always rounds out my knowledge. Second thing, I had my voice. I could talk or I could write. And thirdly, I was able to be persistent. One time when after some calls to Congressman Joyce, he still had some objection, and so I asked for, in writing, what his real objection was. And he gave me that question, and I was able to locate information and get him satisfied with that. So 3 things were important. Issues, knowledge of the issues, the voice, and being persistent. And then I'm also grateful to my Cleveland group, which kept me in the loop as much as they could. And so I guess what the big lesson I learned, that whatever's happening in your personal life, being disrupted and so on, there's probably a way that you can find to still support and participate. And I'm so happy at the good news, because I think that maybe I had a tiny, tiny part in the wonderful effort that brought about such wonderful results. So God bless all.
Thank you, Sister Donna. And you did. Absolutely, your actions mattered in this effort. And again, really appreciate that, Sharon. Thank you for continuing to stay engaged even when you were dealing with your personal issues. Great. So I want to point out something interesting also for our next share. So looking at the slide here right now, I'm looking at the co-sponsors for Senate Resolution 318 around the Global Fund. There's 2 interesting things here. One is that there's a Texas co-sponsor of that resolution. We don't see that very often, and this particular one is Ted Cruz. And then the other one is we actually have 2, the only state that has 2 senators on the resolution is the state of West Virginia. And we don't often see that happen as well. But I want to start by seeing if we can get Margaret Smith come on and tell us a little bit about their work on getting Senator Ted Cruz onto the resolution. Margaret, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Margaret. That's great.
Well, along with everyone else on this call, Dallas has worked very hard all year on this effort. So Dallas is the point person. We're responsible for the whole state of Texas for our Texas senators. So when I saw Ted Cruz at his coffee on lobby day, I immediately went up to him to shake his hand. And having heard from results, often not to let go until you get your entire talk done, I grabbed him with both hands. He listened very attentively, and he said he would look into it. I'm sure it also helped that Eloise Sutherland handed him over 70 letters that she had collected. We met with his foreign policy aide after the coffee, and we had previously met with his North Texas district director and the deputy district director about the Global Fund replenishment. So all year, Yvette Medina, our point person, was sending his office media that was produced throughout Texas. And after the international conference, Grace Liu helped Yvette, emailing Cruz's office often, and it all picked up once the resolution was introduced. So I'm sure others from Texas were also asking him, but I must say we were all floored when he co-sponsored the resolution. Senator Cruz has never co-sponsored anything or signed any letter due to our asks. Our Dallas team was able to get 5 representatives from North Texas on the House resolution. That's the most. It was truly a team effort. So even though we worked all year on this, we got by 8 different people in our group. We had 17 congressional meetings. We attended 12 town halls, or those we were able to ask a question about the Global Fund replenishment. Very end. 4 of our 5 co-sponsors only agreed in the last 2 weeks.
That's great, Margaret. You were a little choppy there. We definitely got most of that. And then, but again, just some fabulous work that happened in Texas. And really, I just love this picture of Ted Cruz and Margaret. And you know that had something to do with it, along with the great follow-up that Yvette and Grace did. And it was just really nice to hear this story. So just real quickly back to West Virginia as well. The amazing work that, that happened there around these two senators was really kind of a combination of the university, our new University of West Virginia group in Morganton, West Virginia, and Judy Hamilton and Charleston, West Virginia. And they're not able to make the call today, but they got their representative, David McKinley, to take his first ever action for results on the Global Fund issues. And again, this is the first action ever on our global issues that he's taken. And they did that with IC meetings and then follow-up in-district meetings. And then their senators came on board through the same sort of IC and follow-up meetings, and also a fabulous op-ed that showed up in the Charleston Gazette-Mail. And as a university, it's working, the faculty, the staff, and the students have really worked together to embrace this, and they really carry a lot of influence in the state, so we saw that going on. And I saw this Facebook post from the group leader there in West Virginia as the replenishment conference was coming up. She said, the Global Fund Replenishment Conference is kicking off soon. I have overwhelming sense of gratitude for having a small part in something big. I'm proud of the work we've been able to do, and with some really great people too. Results has been a wonderful opportunity for me, and I'm looking forward to more great grassroots work together with all of us. I think this has really been a transformative experience for those new folks in West Virginia to make this happen. Great, and so now I want to see if Andy Clark is on. Andy, are you on there?
Yes, I am.
Great, hey, let us have it.
Okay. Well, our first caller, I have 3 words I think that kind of describes our action with Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers and with Senator Murray. One of them I've already heard this morning: persistence, teamwork, and making it personal. All those, we've heard those 3 buzzwords from results many times, but Amy, who's not able to be on the call today, a working mother of 3, is the lone results person that lives full-time in Spokane, and she gets supported by our other groups as much as possible. And she has never given up and stay in contact with Representative McMorris Rogers' office. So we met with the district director last month, the end of the last month, to talk about 517. And we had Joe Easton on the line from the DC office, which is the first time I've ever met in the district office with somebody from the DC office as well participating. And the reason we were able to get him on the line is because of the teamwork that people did at IC that went in and talked to Joe Easton with McMorris Rogers' office. And I think Willie was amongst the people that did that. And then also, I might say that Joe told me that Cricket had been in to talk to him. So, Cricket Nikovich is part of our team too. And she's been in there talking to him and cajoling him like only Cricket can cajole. I think that's a word. Anyway, so it was a lot of people that got him to the table on the phone. So when we went in to talk to the staff in Spokane, Amy did a really good job of making it personal, talking about the number of things she has in common with Representative McMorris Rogers. She had done a lot of research on her, knew a lot about her over the years, and just a great number of things that they have in common. So she made it real personal on these issues for the Global Fund. We also left thank you cards in advance for McMorris Rogers signing on to 517, but also for past bills that she signed on to that aren't necessarily results focused topics at the moment, but they all have to do with health and child health. And so I can quit talking. It's just all of our groups in Washington State seem to share information between each other. We have a very active group leader call that I've attended a few times, and and just the support from group to group is tremendous. While I was in Spokane, I also stopped in and met with Senator Murray's district director. He's been working for her for 9 years and hadn't heard of results. So I took most of the time to talk about results. He had a half an hour and he put off another appointment and listened for over an hour. His comment was, we can use the district directors for our senator and other representatives districts because they work hand in hand all the time. And in fact, when I went in to meet with him, Tracy Couture, McMorris Rogers district director, was in his office. And when I walked in the door, she had remembered my name from the week before and just said, "Oh, hi, Andy, you here to talk about results?" And that felt pretty good. So I don't doubt that all this work does add up. It's kind of like Legos. And you just keep putting one Lego on top of the other, and pretty soon you have a pretty massive thing that you can show people. And I might put a pitch in for calling cards too. Results will make calling cards, and if you leave that card with them, when it's a first meeting or every time you go to an office, they hold on to it and they keep it, and then they recognize the name Results or your name down the road.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much, Andy. Really appreciate that. Another example of some great effort. So let's see if there's like a couple of quick shares out there, 15, 20-second shares that folks want to say something about what you did.
Hi, this is Gail Dolson from Corte Madera, California.
Go ahead, Gail.
And hi, first of all, I got a op-ed piece on the 9th at the Marin Independent Journal, and they put a great picture to go with it with the president of France, Bono, and Bill Gates, and some other people. So that was great. And while we didn't get either of our senators on, I did hear from Senator Feinstein's office, and she's going to put my op-ed on her social media page. So that's pretty exciting, and they promised to work when appropriations comes up to make sure this gets funded.
That's great, Gail. Thank you very much. That's awesome. And you had a great op-ed, and they said they were going to publish it on October 26th, but I think with the replenishment came out, they just thought it was the perfect piece. It was really great to see them do it much sooner. Let's hear some other shares here.
This is Sandra from Connecticut.
Yeah, Sandra, hey.
Hey, you. So can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great.
All right. So in Connecticut, actually, our 5 representatives have always been in support of the Global Fund. And we started talking about it actually probably informally at the IC. So it was a little bit shocking that not a single one of them had sponsored by October 6th. Not a single one. So I will tell you my story is that I wrote Representative Larson's aide on August 30th, September 21st, October 3rd, October 8th. I called in between each time, and we just never got him on. Likewise, Nancy Gardner made multiple calls to Johanna Hayes' office, never got them on. So I want to tell you about the 3 we did end up getting on. Phyllis Wright in Courtney's office, in Representative Courtney's office. I emailed right after the IC, and again when the resolution was introduced. I had a response in mid-September from Gabe Sayre, who I was emailing, was no longer there. I was directed to another staffer, Alexa Kumbelik. I emailed her, then received a response that she's not there anymore, or wasn't working on that. And then was writing Claire Wargius. And on October 8th, Representative Courtney was finally on. Nancy my story with Jim Himes is that I'd written his aid, and again, I mentioned it at the IC, and then on August 30th and September 5th, I wrote him. On October 15th, I got an email from Phyllis saying she saw Representative Himes at the Greenwich Democratic campaign kickoff, and he said he expected to co-sponsor it. Phyllis is the one in our group who, schedules face-to-faces, and this time, instead of the usual scheduler calling her, Representative Himes' foreign aid on foreign policy called her, so she took that opportunity to remind him about 517. And then on September 20th, Phyllis wrote me that, well, I should have heard from that aide. He said he would do it midweek. So the next day I forwarded Phyllis's email to him, adding that Jim's been a champion of the Global Fund. Please get this before him. On October 27th, Phyllis emailed me asking, well, she called Nick too, because I've been calling him, the aide. I said, sure. And then on October 2nd, I finally got an email from the aide saying, we finished the memo for House Resolution 517 last week. We should have an answer soon. I misunderstood that, and the next day, when Ken sent out the list of signers and Jim wasn't on it, I wrote the aide back saying, hey, I thought you said Jim would be on. So the day after that, he wrote me, correcting me that no, he only had said that the memo was finished. So that was October 4th. On October 5th, Nancy saw Jim at a political fundraiser, asked him again about the Global Fund, reminded him again. And finally, on October 7th, Jim signed on. When I wrote Nancy that he'd finally signed on, she felt motivated to once again contact Rosa DeLaura's office. She emailed something using Nicholas Kristof's New York Times column from the previous Sunday on the success of the global health programs. And she finally heard on October 8th that Rosa had signed on. So it was an awful lot of persistence the very week of the Global Fund, even from people who are, usually really stand behind it.
Thanks.
I did want to say one other thing, which is this Sunday, I wanted to say what Peter Sands said was so rewarding to hear. And rewarding certainly because of our efforts, but also because, I'm living in a world that there's so much darkness going on right now. So to hear this piece of light is just and hopeful. And I was wondering if, Ken, if you could write us a little email summarizing that success, because tomorrow, Sunday, kind of a substitute minister at the Unitarian Church, and the theme of the month has been belonging, and what the title of my presentation, what they asked me to present, is called
So we lost you, Sandra. So yes, there is a summary of this on the blog, actually, for anybody who wants to use that as a tool for letting people know about things. But let's go ahead and I appreciate everybody's shares. And again, I'm sure there's a ton of amazing stories out there in addition to the ones we heard. And it really did take folks a lot of.
If possible, I'd like to put a story in that we got. Actually, speaking of Rep. Aguilar.
I need to hold off just for a moment here, because we're gonna who's on the line there?
This is Brian from the Beaumont, California group.
Just like to let's see if we have any time, like right at the end. I have a couple of things I need to kind of cover here before we would take any more shares. I just don't want to run us over too much. So just let's hold on to that thought, and if we have some time at the end, we'll go ahead and give you a call. But I want to. I just on that last share too, again, I think the idea is that, nothing, you can't take anything for granted. Even people who regularly support the issues, if we're not there and remaining persistent with them, there's no guarantee that they're going to take the actions we want them to take. And so it's important to have those relationships and to remain persistent in those particular cases. So I want to I want to talk a little bit about what's next. One thing worth noting is that, even though we had the successful replenishment, doesn't mean that our work is done. We still have to build up Congress to protect and strengthen the global health and education programs that we work on, because we know that the administration is going to threaten them again next year with cuts. You can count on it. And so one of our best ways that we can do this is to share our success on with our action networks, and to share this good news that Sandra and Peter talked about, and use that success to strengthen our groups, to bring more people in and put them into action. And we can do this between now and the end of the year. And I've got a couple of ideas here I think that might be useful for you here on that. So how do we do this? So, we've been talking a lot this year about Hari Han's research, distinguishing between organizing and mobilizing. And if you remember, organizing is about going deeper with people, building personal relationships. It's about providing them with opportunities to take actions that are transformational, things that they never imagined doing themselves, like that Facebook post we saw from the folks from West Virginia, or getting a letter to the editor published. So, and we want to give them guidance while providing them autonomy on their actions, so that they actually own their own successes. And then we really want to also connect them with the bigger picture, to show them how their actions help us accomplish big things in the world, as again, that Facebook post pointed out, and Sister Donna pointed out, that I have some small part in this. And so our Global Fund replenishment activities are one of those ways we can connect people with the bigger pictures in the world. And again, Peter Sands talked about how this is much more than just, what the replenishment has done. It's much bigger. But I want to clarify a bit. When we talk about organizing and growing our groups, some of you might think, oh, I need to do a bunch of outreach to new people. But that's not necessarily the case. We do want us to find new people, but, we might have people that are, already in our networks that we can engage at a deeper level. We can provide them with transformational experiences, something they've never done before, so that they can see how powerful they can possibly be. So you probably already know a lot of people who took action on the Global Fund, or you talked to about the Global Fund, or who are donors to results that you can engage at a deeper level. And so our goal for the balance of this year is for you and your group to identify 1, 2, 3, or 4 people who have the potential to grow as advocates, to share our Global Fund success with them, and then offer them a transformational experience with your group. So what's a transformational experience? So I'd say the best way is to think about this for yourself. What first inspired you? I'm going to go ahead and mute that, if you guys don't mind. What got you inspired when you first got started? What keeps you inspired to keep you going? Is it getting published? Is it meeting with a member of Congress or staff? Is it speaking to a group of people? Is it running an education and action meeting to put other people in action? Is it building your skills and knowledge through some good training? So this is what we can be doing during the month. I encourage you after this webinar to take some time to identify between 1 and 4 people who are already in your network, who have heard about the Global Fund work or results or taken action, or who are donors that you might be able to take to the next level. And again, I've just put a couple of ideas for some actions that you might have them take here on the screen. Help them get a letter to the editor published. Celebrate this bipartisan success through the media and just bring hope into the world with a letter to the editor. Continue to call your representatives and senators into action on the Global Fund resolution or the nutrition resolutions or the Senate TB legislation. Ask them to help you organize the peer-to-peer fundraiser for the November virtual Thanksgiving campaign, or invite them to take part in the results free advocacy training starting on October 17th. And so I just want to let you know that there's a lot of resources to support you in doing all of these things. On Monday, the weekly update will have all of these things updated. They're already on the website, but on Monday, the weekly update will come out with all of these updated things. And the final thing I wanted to do is I just wanted to give an example. So what might it sound like actually to make that request of somebody or to talk to somebody in this way? And so, we put together this laser talk. And so I'll just say it out loud real quickly, but and so you can see that it can actually sound pretty natural to make this kind of a request. So, hey, so I want to let you know about the Global Fund replenishment we've been working on. It was a real success on October 10th. What was amazing is the world came together to raise $14 billion, the $14 billion needed to save an additional 16 million lives over the next 3 years. And I was really excited to see that the US did its part. And we're celebrating this victory now because we know that our group and the results advocates from around the country really had a strong hand in that. So I want to thank you for your part and for taking action and just for being a good audience as we've been talking about the Global Fund kind of nonstop over the last 12 to 18 months. But I just want to let you know also we still have work to do to ensure that the US keeps its promise to the Global Fund. And we're going to really be working on an exciting child survival campaign this coming year. So I'm just thinking I would love to support you to take some actions that will have, help create additional successes on these issues. I could support you and get a letter to the editor published or a meeting with a congressional office. And we've also got some really fabulous advocacy training coming up right now that you could engage in. And I just, our conversations, I know you care about these issues, but, so would you be up for taking your impact to the next level? I would love to support you in doing that. So again, that's the kind of conversation you might be able to have with somebody. Take this laser talk and modify it, use it, whatever parts you like for it. But think about those people again that you'd like to take to the next level, and then have some conversations and see what you can do to build your group between now and the end of the year. So last couple things here, I want to have you mark your calendars, and you can see the weekly update for all these details, new advocate orientation, this launch of this 6-week advocacy training that anybody can participate in. We've got the free agents call and the Action Network call coming up. Again, November, virtual Thanksgiving feast fundraising efforts, and then the international conference. I also want to note that to save the dates again for the international conference, but in this coming week's weekly update, there'll be a survey in there asking you for your input on speakers and sessions you'd like to see. And so please do take advantage of that. And then also just please do take some time to catch up on any reporting that you might have missed, the information on your media, your meetings with members of Congress, and your outreach is really important for us to know and also for our donors and supporters to know. It's important for you to know so you have a sense of all the efforts that are happening to make things happen. And then I want to just remind you to, in the chat window, to let us know your group name and how many people in the room, or email that to Lisa Marshall before you finish up. But I want to throw this back to the gentleman back there in California to talk to us about Pete Aguilar. And for folks who want to stick around for that, please do. You there in California? I think we might have missed him in any case. So, so in the meantime, like I said, go ahead and put your things in the chat window. And then I'm going to go ahead and unmute your lines and give you all a chance to say, give a whoop whoop.
Excuse me, Ken. Ken, this is Sandra again. I'm so sorry. Can you tell me, did you hear what I said?
Yes, we did hear what you said. And then
okay, all right.
The blog post, there's a huge summary of everything that we did there that will be really useful for you tomorrow, Sandra.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great. So, and then, so I just want to give 3 cheers for the work that you've done on the Global Fund. I'm going to unmute all your lines. Go for it.
Toma.
What?
Hello.
All right.
Hi, Andy.
Hey, Tacoma.
Hi.
Hi, Joey. Hi, Andy.
There you go.
Hi, Jeff, wherever you may be.
Thanks for the homage. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Ken.
Oh, there she is. Hi, Teresa. Hi, Teresa.
You're moving around, Teresa.
Hey, John.
This is
John
the tour
Andy.
of our living room.
Fantastic. I see that Janet's on there. Peter's on there. That's great. Nice to see y'all. Oh, Vina's on there. Hey, Vina. Really glad you made it.
Yeah,
Oh, hi, Andy.
I'm sorry for the folks who had problems getting on. That's it's a shame. The recording will be good though.
Oh, we're gonna take a picture.
Just to prove there's 8 pieces of results.
That's right.
Of course, it'll only be 7 pictures.
All right.